I've got 5 sewing hacks that are absolute game changers and honestly make such a difference in my personal sewing process. Hi guys, I'm Tammy and welcome back to my channel. I've personally tried so many sewing hacks in the past and I'm not gonna lie, some of them are pretty crap, but I've got 5 that I personally really do love using, and they're things that I didn't really think about to try until recently, and I know you're gonna love them too. The first hack that I'm going to share today is to use spray starch on your fabric before you start sewing. I have always heard people talk about using spray starch on fabric before, and I never really thought to give it a try because I didn't really know what it did. This is what this looks like. It comes in a bottle in like an aerosol spray, and I think traditionally it's just used when you're ironing clothes to help it give it a crisper finish. But let me tell you, when you use this on fabric before you start sewing, it makes such a difference to how it handles in the sewing machine. So for example, where this makes a huge difference is if you're sewing specifically with knit fabric. So if I give you a close-up on this knit piece of fabric, you can see the fabric edge starts rolling over on itself. But what you can do is take this over to your ironing board and lay the fabric down, and then you want to take your spray starch and you basically want to spray it all over the fabric piece. Definitely don't be stingy, you definitely want to use quite a bit of this, and then once you've done that, you then place a press cloth over this and you use a dry iron to kind of seal it all together. And this is what the fabric sample looks like after I've used that spray starch on it. You can see the top edge has stopped rolling as much. It also definitely has more stability, so it's not as floppy. So when I put this through the sewing machine, it should be a bit stiffer and much more easier to handle. I know it sounds like such a simple tip, but I have heard so many people talk about it, and for some reason I never got on the bandwagon and actually tried it out until now. It's definitely much easier to do than I thought it would be, and it makes a huge difference, especially if you're using knit fabric. So my next sewing hack is for those of you that print patterns at home and are sick and tired of having to tape pieces together. Have you tried using a portable printer that prints on a roll? This section of the video is sponsored by Munbyn, and they sent me over this life-changing printer. Honestly, if you print patterns and you know that your pattern pieces will fit on an A4 piece of paper, you just want the continuous length to be on a roll, this is a game changer. So this is their portable wireless mini printer, and I love how cute it is. It's really nice and lightweight, and basically what it is, if I open it up, you can see that it's actually a roll of paper inside this printer, and it allows you to print on a continuous length of piece of paper, which is really great, especially if you have long pattern pieces that you know are going to fit on an A4 size. So I have my computer in front of me and I've got a pattern that I want to print out on the Munbyn printer. I made the document 193 centimeters wide, which is smaller than A4 paper, so it will fit comfortably on the paper. So the main settings you just need to pay attention to is to set your paper size to the exact same size that you made the document. Mine was 193 centimeters. And then also make sure that your scale is set to 100%. And then as you can see here, it shows a little preview of how it's going to print. I've now connected the printer to my laptop and it comes with a cable, so it's really easy to do. The reason why I've also really been loving this printer is the fact that it doesn't use any ink, so it's completely inkless. How it prints is through thermal printings. And then to tear off the paper, it has this serrated edge here, which means you can just simply tear it off. And this is what the printed paper looks like now that it's fully come out. As you can see, if I put a normal A4 paper against this, you can see it's definitely longer than an A4 piece of paper, but the width is the same. With this style of printing, you can go as long as you like, which is the great reason to use a printer that prints on a roll. I also like to include a 1 centimeter test square on my paper to make sure that it's printed to scale. And if I just put a ruler against that, you can see it is the correct scale. So this is the pattern piece I printed out of the same paper that came out of that printer, and it's really nice and lightweight. It's not too thick, so it's perfect for me if I'm testing sewing patterns. I definitely recommend this printer, so if you want to find out where you can get this, I've left a link down below on the Amazon website, as well as a coupon code to get this discounted. The next hack is to use chalk to mark your fabric. I know this sounds really simple, but when I first started sewing, for some reason, I didn't ever bother to mark the right and wrong side of my fabric. If you try using something like a pencil or even sometimes the water erasable markers, that can actually obviously disappear if you use an iron, but also sometimes the fabric won't actually show those types of markings. I've always found when I use chalk on my fabric, it always makes such a clean mark, and I know exactly which side is the right and the wrong side. So I've got this blue one, I also have this white one, and I also have this red one. I like to have different colors because on some types of fabric, one of these will show up better than the others. So I would personally get a range of different colors of chalk and use that on your fabric. So I've got some standard cotton here that I'm just going to show you how it marks. It's really easy to do. So as you can see from this test, you can see the white chalk marks a lot better than the blue or the red, which again is why I prefer having all three colors, because this varies depending on what color fabric you're using. My next favorite sewing hack is to use pins when you're cutting open a buttonhole. I can't even count on my hand the amount of times that I've tried to open up a buttonhole and I've used a seam ripper and I've gone past the buttonhole and ripped it open. Honestly, it's so frustrating, but all you need to do is to use pins when you're doing this process. So I've got a buttonhole right here that I've already made, and what you want to do is take a pin and place it in this thread bar section around here, so just under where this thread bar is. So if I just kind of slot it in over here and out there. And the whole idea behind this is that when you put the seam ripper in, it can't go past these pins, so it won't rip open this section accidentally. And then I'm going to slide it up and it shouldn't go past where we've put the pin. As you can see, it's stopping where that pin has sat. And that just means I can't accidentally go past that bit and cut the buttonhole open. So you just take these pins out, and as you can see, the buttonhole has nicely been opened and I haven't gone past where the thread ends. I know this hack definitely looks very easy, and it is. I found like a lot of people tend to overlook the simple steps that actually make a big difference when you're sewing. Now I know I can use pins at the end of the buttonhole and the beginning of the buttonhole, so I know I can't accidentally cut through them. So my last sewing hack is to use a glue pen or a glue stick to help you sew a zipper. This tip even works if you're trying to pattern match pieces, or you're just basically trying to make sure that two pieces of fabric that you're using doesn't accidentally misalign itself. So it's really helpful when you are trying to sew a zipper, because that needs to be really precise. I have this fabric glue pen here that I like to use, as well as, like I mentioned, the Pritt stick. They both do the exact same thing. This one is just thinner, so you can get a more precise glue stick mark, and this one is obviously thicker, so it's going to be a bit more sporadic. Let me show you what I mean just by showing how it can stick two pieces together. So I have two pieces in front of me, and let's pretend I want to stick a zipper to this seam right here. So what I would do is I'd open up the zipper, and then I would place this along here, and normally you might just pin this in place, but sometimes it can be really difficult to keep that in place when it's only pinned, because it can move around in the sewing machine. What I do also like to do now is take a fabric pen, glide this along the edge like this, and then again along this edge, and then I'm going to place this on top and press down. And obviously you can be as precise as you want. I'm just showing you for the example of this. And then I like to let that dry for a couple of minutes. And as you can see, it's nicely been tacked down. So now it's really easy for me to put this through the sewing machine and it won't move around. I'm also just using the Pritt stick right here to show you how well it holds a seam. So I've glued one side. I'm also going to glue another side here. And if I put those pieces together and just press down, you also want to wait for this to dry. So this is what those two pieces look like together that I glued with the Pritt stick. If I open it out, you can see it really has held that seam together really nicely. That's from the front side, and then the back looks like that. This is a really great hack, especially if you find it really hard to pattern match your pieces, the fabric together. So you can literally just glue stick it in place first, and then you can sew over the seam. It just makes it so much easier to handle, especially if you're dealing with slippery fabric. I hope you enjoyed these 5 sewing sewing hacks. Honestly, they're such game changers and personally make my sewing processes so much easier. You can find all the products that I talked about in this video down in the description box below, as well as a coupon code for that Munbyn wireless printer. Honestly, it's such a great tool to use. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.